Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Secrets in the Saddle, All Things Cycling podcast with your host, Sylvie and cycling coach. So before we get started, I have some quick announcements. I have two actually, and they are related to winter or cycling training skills. Now, August is about the time where a lot of us start thinking about, what am I going to do to, improve what I'm already doing now? So you think about, how am I doing on the road? What kind of skills would I love to improve, and how am I going to get those skills? And that's where I have something so amazing for you. It doesn't matter where you're sitting because we're in like 35 different countries. Amazing. So this can impact all of you if it interests you or piques your interest. So the first thing is I have a cycling skills online 4-week workshop for women. And this is where we're going to, it's only for September and October. Each week we focus on a different skill. So first we really work on what is a smooth pedal stroke and how to get more efficient. I'm going to share with you the skills and tips and my secrets about that. And then we're going to move on to hills and then speed. And then we finish it up with nutrition. We also talk about our weight training program, which is so important for strength training to become better. With this one, it's super fun because every week we do the workshop and then I give you homework and then we have a Q&A. So you basically have me as a coach for the whole month. And that is cyclingskillspro.com. Go, you can register now, secure your spot September or October. Then the next one is a much longer, more training, more geared towards working towards goals and really drilling in the skills that we go through in the 4-week program. Pedal stroke, then we get into the drills and it's periodized. I also help you with organizing yourself to be scheduled in your training so that you don't overdo it and you become very intentional. I just love this because a lot of people just get on the online programs and they just go for broke all the time. You have to plan it. It's an 80-20 rule, 80% endurance, 20% intensity. And if you're not getting that, you're just going to basically overtrain yourself and overdo it. So the 16-week program is dedicated to that and so much more. So this starts in November to March. So it's truly through the winter. Weight training, online program, maybe some racing, group riding. All of that is going to be part. You just join us and we'll take care of your winter training. Now go to 16weekroadcycling.ca and secure your spot. Registration is not open right now, but those who are on the VIP will get a chance to secure a spot at an early bird price. So don't wait, get on the list. All right, take care and have an amazing day. And don't forget to ride your bike. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another amazing episode of Secrets from the Saddle, All Things Cycling with your host, Sylvie. And we have a really, really amazing lady, Andrea Wise. I met her not too long ago in a mastermind group that I joined in the spring. And through that, you'll notice a lot of people on the podcast that were from here. But I brought Andrea in because with sport, there's business. And there are some athletes who, like, let's just talk about the Olympics, pro and elite athletes who, what happens after sport. How can you leverage your current situation in social media to build a business around you? And that's where Andrea comes in with her expertise. So this is totally out of the realm of just straight up cycling, but we know that the Olympics are coming. After Olympics, we have athletes who are either going to go on to Worlds, retire, or go for another Olympic run. So what happens to those who end up retiring? And then we can also talk about what happens to those. Well, maybe we won't get into the ones that who are forced into early retirement due to injury. We're not going to talk about those that just yet, but we're going to talk about. So Andrea, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here and to, listen to your expertise.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. So thank you for asking. Just a quick little brief background about myself. So I currently live in Chicago, and August will be 20 years for me, which is super crazy. I'm originally from Oregon and grew up as an athlete myself. I actually played softball in college and have continued to be very active. I've been in the health and wellness industry for about 18 years, which is super crazy to even, think about that, but it's been a long time and I wouldn't have it any other way. In addition to that, I've been an entrepreneur since 2012, which has been a really wild ride in a lot of different areas, but also have a background in corporate America in terms of running teams, kind of helping scale businesses, grow teams, and helping grow other businesses. So I have an interesting background that has given me a really interesting Rolodex of experience and people that are kind of in my bubble. And I'm super excited to now have you in my bubble and be on here chatting with you about sport and business and strategy and how that relates to athletes as we age and what we want to do in terms of longevity of our life and how we can kind of meld the worlds into the best of both worlds as we continue to, age through our journey.
I love the word age. Maybe that's just because I feel kind of aged, but the thing is that there are a lot of us who decide that we are so passionate about our sport that we want to make a business out of it. And I guess we could talk about like yourself, like myself. I've been in the fitness industry since 20, 20 years, coaching for 15, have, done various, figure competitions right into cycling coaching. And now I marry the two with, the health aspect. And how do you, how do you put it all together to make it like a viable business? I mean, you've got that side, and then you have the athletes who are using their, I guess, their presence or, their position. So like, like a pro cyclist or like an Olympic cyclist, how do they leverage that portion or that, where they are in sport to build a business around that? Where do you want to start, Andrea?
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially as of recent. I've been having more and more conversations with different athletes at different stages, with the NCAA enacting these new rules so that, people in college and at a younger age can now get paid essentially for their likeness and or other things. It's really opened up gates because for a lot of athletes, you couldn't get paid in terms of sponsorships or brand deals or anything. And if they did, it's happening under the table, which everyone knows that happens, and it's a thing, depending on which sport you're in, right, and which college you go to. So it's interesting because at all these different levels, there's an opportunity depending on your likeness and your brand and your visibility. And then in addition to that, your God-given talent, or your hard work and sweat equity in terms of what you can get. And a lot of times I think that it depends on what your vision and what you stand for is, how you perform and how people are drawn to you, and is there a way that you can figure out how to monetize that with specific brands and or educate people that are drawn to your story or can identify with you. And there's a sweet spot for that because everyone has a story. You think about a business or you think about the things that we do, and you think about athletes and their story and, their success or their pitfalls or how they've, came back. And everyone has a story of some kind. So once you have a little bit more clarity, in my opinion, about what your vision is or what's important to you or what you want to stand for, then it becomes easier to execute that vision.
Yeah, so let's talk about when you were talking about, you're mentioning the branding. Now, I mean, I guess we can go back. I guess this could relate to any age, because you can have a personality, a brand, like a presence. And because I've just come up across this myself as being approached by, a company to, sell a certain product because, you're affluent, or your influence on social media is drawn them to you, or they found you. So
Mhm.
how would you start, like, talking to somebody, say, who has been approached? Like, how would you have them build that contract? Or like, what kind of advice do you give them? Like, because there's all sorts of people who want your name on their brand or be associated with you.
Mhm.
How do you guide them? Let's start. I guess we could start there, because you just mentioned it and I was like, oh, I want to talk about that.
Absolutely. I think it really depends on the person, right? And their visibility and their reach. If you talk about influencers, now you and I are of an older vintage, and so we didn't grow up with social media and all these things that people have now. But when you talk about brands and you talk about marketing, commercials and reach, they want to be able to sell said product. And, based on a given individual, if they have a lot of reach or influence, then a brand would like to partner with said individual, because they want to be able to reach a specific demographic and sell more of said thing, right? So at the end of the day, it often comes down to dollars.
Well, yeah.
You know,
Percentage. What?
Exactly. So a lot of that depends on the specific brand and the individual as well, right? So who are they trying to go after? What's their demographic? What is the brand vision or alignment? If you're talking about a supplement company versus an athletic apparel, a company, a cycling company, a specific type of bike or helmet or shoes, right? There's different people that fit into that brand ethos or are specifically attracted to, said thing. And so they want to find more of the people that have the visibility, that have their ideal audience that they can attract.
So the company that I just sort of started working with is a bike rack company. It's a European company. They are just situated in Montreal. I guess, like, I'm the mom with the car, with the bike rack, with the kids.
Exactly.
And I'm like, yeah, I guess. And it just is funny, Andrea, because it happened at such a time where I was looking at my bike rack. I'm like, I need to upgrade. And it was just like the universe sent me this email. And so it just actually happened. I was like, what? No way. I looked at their website. I'm like, oh, they got bike racks. I'm like, well, it just so happens. So, and we signed like a little contract, but there's no timing. There's just a percentage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's working more with that company to get, create that visibility for them. And it's like, do you want my bike rack or this bike rack? You don't want to upgrade for this one to this one. You know what I'm saying?
Right, absolutely. And, I think it's one of those things where you've been in the cycling community for a long time. It's part of who you are. It's part of what you do. It's part of your family, kind of life and the activities that you do. And there's a lot of other people that that check a lot of those same boxes. So for this, who better than you to be an advocate for how much you love this bike rack, right?
Yeah.
And does for you and how it serves a purpose and all of these other things. So when you think about that for different brands or different people coming out of sport, or again, with all of that visibility, it's something that's been around for forever, but I think because of social media and just visibility in general with some of these people who have such massive followings in, in specific sports, and just the access. You think about the global access that, people have. And so if there's a brand that can ship globally, or, you can purchase it globally, or it, whatever, then they have an ability to, sell and market much better than they did previously.
Yeah, really. It's like I forgot to ask them like how they found me, because it's always interesting
Absolutely.
the avenue, because
Mhm.
it's not like we cross paths or anything. But so do you work with individuals or athletes who are making transitions? Like, has anybody come to you and said, like, Andrea, can I work with you to help me build something that is would be like financial, like a good financial business out
Mhm.
of what I'm currently doing?
Mhm.
Is that part of?
There's a lot of conversations that have been had with different athletes that I've worked with at different points in time about what are you going to do after sport. And it's a really big, it's a really big deal. And it's a conversation that a lot of people don't like to have, because as a former athlete and whatnot, as yourself, you know, I was just saying a while ago, right? How amazing was it? Because I played softball in college. How amazing was it that that's, what I essentially got paid to do? I got paid to go to school, and I got paid to like play one of my favorite sports. I was joking the other day that I played in the dirt for 11 or 12 years of my life, right? And those were some of the best years of my life. But for other athletes, some of the WNBA athletes or cycling athletes or male athletes, there's an expiration date, right? We have our sweet spot in terms of years, and we don't like to think about what's going to happen after we can't play anymore, because there's this thing that we love, but it's very much a reality. And so the conversation of, okay, what do you want to do after sport is a really important one. And what can you do while you're in sport to set yourself up to be successful after sport? And what does that mean for your livelihood? Based on what's important to you, what you want to stand for. Do you want to have a foundation? Do you want to educate? Do you want to work with the youth? Do you have some grandiose idea for some business that you want to figure out how you can execute and leverage, your resources or what you've been doing for all of these years in sport to help yourself be more successful after? And there's no right or wrong answer. I just prefer that people have some kind of plan or vision so that they can start working on it, because there is a transition. You don't all of a sudden just stop sport and then, it's this easy transition into said other thing, right? There's an identity shift. You're so used to having a schedule. There's all these other layers that go into it. And if you have this, oh shit moment, then what are you going to do? So I like to have some planning or some discussion about what that is, so that there's some lead time leading up to it, so that you can get certain things in place to set yourself up for success. Because the transition alone is hard enough, just from out of sport to normal human, especially depending on
Like,
what kind of sport or at what level you were at.
I think it's and before even that, I think it's the identity shift
Oh,
of being. I just remember, it's a he was a paddler, and and he went through, I think, 2 Olympic runs, and I went to school with his sister, and I just remember following him. But I also remember following him when he decided to retire, and basically no, and I think, and his journey, because and it wasn't the best, because I mean, he didn't go down the rabbit hole of, like some people do, but it was the whole like nobody cares anymore about you.
irrelevant.
It's really harsh, but it's an on off switch. Like, nobody's massaging you and like helping you exit. And and I just remember, reading an article and having him like you could just feel the bitterness and just like the reality of like, oh my gosh, like I
Mhm.
had no idea that it was going to be like this. And what do I do with myself now?
Absolutely. It's
Right.
interesting because I've worked with a handful of executives, right? And that's a different type of sport. They're a different an executive is a different type of athlete. So I've worked with a few CEOs, and when they retire from their company, they have the same thing, this huge identity crisis. You go from leading this massive charge of a massive company with all these people and having this, this identity and this visibility. And then all of a sudden you're just, home and can do whatever you want. And you don't have a schedule and you don't have to travel. And then it's like, okay, well, what's my purpose? What am I going to do? So, for athletes, they have the same thing, right? It's just they're going through similar things. It's just different.
Yeah. It's like, here's your paycheck. Here it doesn't exist anymore. And like, really nice to know you. Like we're on to the next. And I think, and yeah, because I've talked to quite a few, well, enough high level athletes that I always ask them, like, what's your next 5 years kind of look like? Like, what do you have going on? And surprisingly enough, the ladies have a lot like school still going on. They're like finishing a master's, they're like transitioning. I was like, okay, so they're just like, yeah, I'm just, waiting for this. And then I'm gonna have like I'm already like set myself up. And I was like, wow, that's really smart. And then there are some that are like, what? Like,
Unsure of
oh,
what they're going to do and what that transition looks like.
yeah, because it's just a lot of and like you said, it's the schedule, right? It's just so repetitive and so like what's next and what are we training for? And then, like I have to work on set skill to be better and I gonna need 6 months to do that or whatever.
Yep.
But yeah. So so that's why I was thinking and then there's like other people who exit early
Hmm.
or injury. And do
Yep.
you work with individuals like that? Because if they like, I just find if they don't have help, that's when a lot of depression sits in because that is kind of like I always say it's a surprise. Like there was no planning, it just happened overnight. And
Hmm.
what do you do?
Absolutely. And that's really difficult. If you've been any athlete that's ever had any kind of injury, it's unexpected because you don't want to sit out of your sport. And then
Yeah.
if you unfortunately suffer an injury that ends your career, then there's all of the emotional things that come with it, right? Talking about the Olympics with things coming out of COVID and whatnot, I was having a discussion with a good friend of mine about the Olympics and which athletes are choosing to go and which are not, and asking my opinion around, well, what would you do? And for me, I was like, okay, if I'm an athlete that's at the end of my rope, so to speak, and I'm on the end towards the end of my career, and this was going to be my last hurrah or my last chance, and I worked all of this time, and this is my opportunity to get to the Olympics, would I sit out? Or would I want to go versus an athlete who is maybe younger and could go in the future? That's a very, very different struggle for someone to go through when you talk about the decision that you have to make, right? Because it depends on where you are in your career. Something that I would have done when I was in my 20s is not something that I would now do as I'm starting to approach the 40 mark. So um, different choices based on where you are in your life. And so to kind of go back to your question in terms of an athlete that sustains an injury and now they have to end their career, not only do they need to rehab and get to a point depending on the severity of the injury so that they can be active and do things in their normal life. now they also have to deal with, the regret or the emotions of not ever being able to compete at said level again. And then what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Because there's that whole identity crisis / worthiness / what's my purpose now, and that whole other shift in transition that needs to happen. And then, like, okay, what did I do to set myself up in terms of livelihood? Am I good financially? Was I not very smart with my money beforehand? Like, what other skill sets do I have that I can, do and leverage so they have purpose? So there's a lot of pieces that have to be ironed out, so to speak.
So how do you work with someone like that? Like, do you have steps in place, or is it that simple? Like, how would you start transitioning? Like, we'll just talk quickly about someone like that, but I want to talk after about well, I guess this is part of it, but I also want to do the branding part. And I guess it is all kind of the same, but this is a different circumstances where it's just like surprise. Hello, you're here, and then, you're gone. And like you said, have you been set up? Was your money taken care? Did you spend it wisely or not? Like, how did you work with someone like that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in my perspective, or in my opinion, it's really about, you don't know what you don't know. And once you have some kind of vision or idea about what it is you want to do and where you want to go, then it's easier to get the right people in place. I'm definitely not someone that knows everything, but I'm someone who is very resourceful and knows a lot of people. So, if it's like, okay, I have this amount of money, I want to figure out, how I can leverage it or whatever else. Okay, well, let's get you in front of a couple different financial people so that we can figure out what some like good, responsible options are for you. If you have some other business ideas or some other things, okay, what does that look like? And what would the execution strategy be like? And how can we bring this to fruition? What's it going to look like in terms of generating revenue? All of these things. So it's kind of like, what's the vision? What's the problem? How can we figure out an execution plan or a strategy? And what does that timeline look like? Because not everything can happen all at once. There's seasons to things. Certain things take a certain amount of time. And then just really figuring out, okay, with all of these puzzle pieces, how do we put this picture together in a way that feels good for you? Because it's not my life, and you can be advised by people who have your best interest in hand for the bigger picture, right? And then there's other people who will take advantage of you. And so my goal is always to listen to what the goal is and try and surround the person with the best possible people and options so that they can make an educated decision and choice versus being led astray in some other way that might not serve them.
So that's one. Now let's talk about that. Let's talk about the high level athlete. Now we've got a lot that are like circling, like right now, we just went through soccer and Tour de France is still on. We're going into the Olympics. So any one of those like high level, high performance, high, how to say, like, in the media, there's a word, I'm thinking of it. One of those people, how would you help them sort of leverage what they're doing right now for like the future? Say they're still going on for another 2-5 years and they're like, okay, my goal is in 5 years, I want to be like here financially. I have, like you said, you mentioned like a charity or a foundation, or back into teaching. Like, how do you help those people leverage themselves right now as they're super into their sport?
Mhm. It really is all about sitting down and having a discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of questions about where you are right now, where do you ultimately want to go, and then what are the options in order to get there? What things do you have in place? Where do you feel really, strong and sure about things in your life? Where are you not so sure? Where do you want some additional support and advisement? What do you want your life to look like? Do you want to continue living where you're living? Do you want to travel more? Do you want to live in multiple different places? There's so many things when you talk about unpacking what that plan's going to look like, and no one has a crystal ball. But what you can do is you can put a rough roadmap in place to get certain things in line. You can't, like I said, you can't do everything overnight, but what you can do is take a look at where you are now, figure out where you want to go, and then based on asking really good questions, in terms of, some people are really big on wanting to, like I said, give back to the youth. Or some people, based on their upbringing, they want to put a foundation or something together to, give back to kids maybe that were similar to them, or to address a problem or something that they were going through where they didn't feel like there was necessary resources or adequate support. Someone maybe along the way was maybe touched by a specific person or individual with, said issue, right? And so lots of people, like, think about the course of, maybe the last like 10, 15, 20 years of your life, right? There's different people who you've encountered or different things that you've gone through that have shaped who you are today. And if you were an athlete that was, on the precipice of retiring, 2 to 5 years from now, if you were to kind of like zoom out and someone was to go through a bunch of these questions with you, you'd probably be able to get a better picture of what you would like the next, 2 to 5 or 10 years to look like. And so you just figure out a plan and then get the necessary people or things in place and work on that execution.
Do you have any examples you could
Um,
share? Like, say, like somebody you've worked with, or that you can think of that you've helped in with regards to your.
I can't give any specific examples,
Not
just
exact name, but
for confidentiality reasons. But if you think about maybe someone who was playing said sport and, they now, like, I feel like transition into media is oftentimes, something that is, that's quote unquote normal, right? Or some kind of media something, and they start some kind of foundation, and then, they want to go on and, kind of like have a family and, do something like that, right? Or sometimes there's people who also have this business vision, that they want to now put their skills to use and start, a certain type of business, right? So there's no right or wrong way, because everyone's their own individual, and, anything's possible essentially. But it's really just about that. What's your vision? And then, what's the execution plan? And does it make sense, right? Does it check all the boxes? Like, are you doing something just because you want to do it? Are you doing it because you need to generate a certain amount of revenue? Are you doing it because you want to build some kind of legacy that is ongoing for years and years to come, after your passing? Like what is it that's important to you? And then, then you figure out a plan and then you execute it.
True. I know and you know what? It's funny. I was just looking at your Facebook page. Speaking of a plan, and I was just like, and you were talking about slowing down to figure it out.
Oh, slowing down to speed up. Yeah.
Yes. Talk about that.
Sure.
Let's talk about that, because I am pretty sure, and I'm kind of one of them, that would love to skip ahead about 10 steps and maybe a couple years and and land where I want to be like right now. So
Mhm.
can you talk on that whole concept of slowing down to go forward? Because you had a couple steps in there. I didn't get to read them all because I'm going
Uh-huh.
to go back. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like, this is me. And this is what, because I was like, just yesterday, I was like, clear off my desk. I'm like, okay, I need to make a plan
Uh-huh.
of what, my next couple of years is going to, sorry, next 6 months to
Uh-huh.
the next couple of years. So can you talk on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have mentors and whatnot that I work with and coaches that I work with as well. And, sometimes we need to take our own advice or we need someone else to tell us these things that we already know. But, we as humans are creatures of habit. And most people are creatures of habit. There are some people who are more creative and, live life by the seat of their pants, and there's a lot more spontaneity in it. And that's a certain type of individual. But typically we get in this routine, and you maybe do your workout, you have your family, you do your work, you go to work, you take the family vacations, you're working on your business, you're just kind of on this said hamster wheel. And it's really easy for your calendar to get very full. Everyone likes to use the word that I'm busy. I used to be one of those
Try
people.
not to use that anymore. I'm just distracted. That's
Yeah, well, you can be busy, right? You can
yeah.
make yourself busy every single day, but are you doing things because you're choosing to, or are you just putting things on your calendar to make yourself busy? And so I've I stress to people the importance of being able to zoom out and or have white space on your calendar. If you're just going from thing to thing to thing all the time,
Yeah.
it's very monotonous. But if you really want to plan, you have to zoom out and, kind of take note of what's happening on your day to day. Are all of the things that you're doing every day serving you and or serving your bigger vision and picture, right? I keep talking a lot about this vision that you have. And so sometimes in order to zoom out and slow down, we need to do less and say no, because maybe not everything that you're doing is serving you. Maybe there are things that you're doing that you could delegate or automate to other people so that you could focus on only the things that you're doing. And it really just depends on what's important to you. And there are definitely seasons of these things, right? There's seasons in business, there's seasons in training when we're talking about it as athletes. The in season, the off season, and everything else that happens in between. But the only way to really go further faster is really to kind of slow down and say no to more things and figure out what's really important to you. Maybe you're doing like 10, 15, 20 things right now. But again, is that really serving you and your bigger vision? And if it's not, okay, how do we get rid of these things so that you can put more focused energy and intention on maybe 2 or 3 things at a time? Would that speed things up and help you go further faster so that you could actually enjoy life a little bit more? Probably. And people oftentimes struggle with that because they're like, oh, well, I have to, I have to, I have to. Okay, well, let's not have to do anything. You either get to and you have choice. You either choose to do it or you can choose not to do it, but you don't have to do anything.
I'm like, I would rather not do anything. No, I'm just kidding. I'm so, and I just started like delegating certain things, like with his podcast, right? Like getting it up on Instagram, like getting it up on the website. I'm just like, oh my God, like shoot me. And I'm like,
There's people that would love to do it. And
I know, and I found some.
right?
Yeah.
Everything that you dislike to do or say, I never ever want to do that again, I guarantee you there's someone who that thing fills their cup and they want to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're good at it as well and fast. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, I will pay for that. And I need to do a little bit more of that because I was just thinking, I'm like you said, I was thinking, okay, what can I get rid of
Mhm.
that somebody could do way better than me and faster, and I just like will pay for that to get it done. And oh my God, it felt so good. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome, because like all my podcasts are there and I can just like start sharing them at a moment. Like I was just like, whoa, this is worth the X number of dollars that I paid just to be free of that job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes people need permission. Sometimes people need to see things through a different lens. Sometimes you need to frame things a little bit differently. Sometimes you need a mindset shift to make these steps in progress. You know, we're all at different places at different points in time, and we all have this, you know, programming, or we think that we should, or you know, we feel guilty or whatever about these other things. But once, you know, you have permission, or once you understand that there's a different way, it's very freeing.
It is, because I was just like, oh my gosh, what else can I offload?
Exactly.
And so I can like just focus on some of the things that I need to take care of, that, you know, that build the ROI. Like, I know this is kind of taking a different step, but that's like, it's anything, you know, like, if you're a high level athlete, you have to start like deciding what you need to do to move forward. And like you got your CEOs, you got your busy moms who are trying to run businesses. You get like, we're all kind of lumped in the same pile, maybe different column. We're on the same spreadsheet, different column, but
it's very true. You know, you think about athletes and everything. I mean, I think about athletes that I've worked with, and when I was an athlete, you know, myself. And you know, you have sleep hygiene that's so important to repairing your body, right? You have the food and the nutrition and the fuel that needs to go into your body. You have to eat it, but that doesn't mean you have to prepare it. Someone else can do that. And again, you don't know what you don't know. So not all the athletes know what they need to be consuming that's going to serve what they need to do in terms of performance. So you hire an expert for that. You know, you think about the body work that happens. You think about the strength and conditioning that needs to happen. You think about the mindset work that needs to happen. You think about the soft tissue work that needs to happen, the person that needs to, you know, tune your bike, or the experts that you need for your equipment. There's all these different things that someone is an expert in. And so it really does take a team when you're talking about, you know, whether you're a high performing athlete, whether you're, you know, a mom and a business owner, whether you're a CEO and an executive of some kind, you know, there's all these different pieces, right? It's not done solo by one person being an expert at every single facet of every single thing. It just doesn't work like that.
You get nice and comfortable with delegating, which is nice, because sometimes you just have to let go of all of that stuff just to, oh my gosh, have some free time. And
super important.
Yeah,
that white space is important.
Because you just think about look at your week, and sometimes I just go like, Andrea, I'm like, oh my gosh, another week just passed by, and I wasn't able to get to that, and I'm like, oh fuck, you know, like shit. And I hate the fact that time passes so quickly,
especially
right?
as they start to get older.
I know.
I feel like they just, you know, things start to kick into sixth gear, and like time is just flying by. And you know, being able to slow down, enjoy the moments, being able to choose what you get to do versus saying I have to do all of these things. It's just such a better way to live. But there is a big mindset shift, and culturally, you know, you're in Canada and I'm in Oregon, but culturally, depending on where you are, there's all this like work more.
Yeah.
No time off, no freedom, no vacations, no play, all of these things. But we need to live.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think sometimes like, and I'm trying to make one of those shifts, is that you see what you want. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see where you want to be and you're like, fuck, I have to like grind it out now to get to that. And just like, oh my gosh, like I can't let this drag on
And
and
agree.
drag on.
And there are definitely seasons, and at different points in time, right? As an athlete, there are seasons where you just have to grind. But I'm a really big proponent about making sure that you are building your life around your business or around your other thing or whatever your transition is versus your business around like everything else. Because if you build something and you don't take into consideration all of the other things that you want to do, then you're setting yourself up for failure. If you don't want to work 10 hours a day, if you want to have the freedom to travel, if you want all of these things, then you take that into consideration and you build it accordingly, not reverse.
Yeah. Okay, say that again. No, I'm serious. Say it again.
Yeah, just really taking into consideration what's important for you, not only right now, but long term, and then working towards what it is that you want, taking into consideration that you might be in a grind it season. Okay. When is there the light at the end of the tunnel? When is there that time when you're like, okay, I'm not working 10 hours anymore, right? I want to work 5 hours, or I want to work 4 hours, or I want to have more time to travel or more time with my kids. Okay. So where are you now? And in order to get to that, what needs to happen? Okay. And how do we figure out a plan that we can execute so that we can make what we want come to fruition? We want to make that our reality, not our reality, 2 or 5 years from now. How can we make this happen faster?
And that's where I'm at this year. I'm at that. So I made the decision to hire someone to help me.
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny because it's just like hiring a coach, like as an athlete to get, or hiring me as a coach for a cyclist. How much time do you want to waste just trying to figure things out? Like how many YouTube videos do you need to watch before you hire somebody who can tell you exactly what you need to get where you want to go? So
time is our most valuable asset.
It is.
And you can always find someone who can give you support, accountability, or can be an expert to help you skip those steps. In order to go further, faster, oftentimes you need to invest in yourself, whether you're an athlete, did you figure out your programming? Probably. But why not pay someone who's been doing it for years that can, do it in 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour and give you exactly what you need versus, you trying to trial and error and figure it out. I love hearing that you just hired someone. I work with a client in California, and we had a call, I don't know, like 6 months or so ago, and we put together a little strategy, and she did a great job executing it. She brought someone else on her team, now delegated a bunch of things, has made a ton of progress, really big ROI on her business. And, now we're kind of working on the next steps, right? Okay, well, how do we hire more people on your team so that you can, just do the things that you really like to do? And that's really where the magic happens, So the progress that can be made if you're open and willing to release a little bit of control, feel good about your vision, feel good about that plan and execution strategy, feel like you have support and accountability. It might be a little uncomfortable, but it's possible. There's another way. It
does feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Very anxious about this. But the thing is that I've known for years this is what I needed to do.
I love it.
And so I sat for years, and it's just like, it's just like people who sit around waiting for things to happen, waiting for, the weight to melt off, waiting for the money, waiting. And I'm just like, I'm so tired of waiting. I mean, I'm doing lots of stuff. It's just not getting me where I want to go. And so like, I'm just busy doing busy stuff. And so I was just like, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And so therefore I have to do it. I paid the money.
Love
and
that.
now it's the angst part about actually like being forced to do it, because that's what it is. Like, I can draw out things for a year, like you can draw things out like, oh yeah, and like I said, the weeks just melt away and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's like 6 months into the year. And like, so the thing is being accountable, having the plan, having the homework, it's all these things. And like, sometimes just, it's just like, this is what you should do, stop doing that. And I'm like, I've always wondered, I've been spending years wondering about what I should do about this.
And it could be solved in a nice little quick conversation.
Yeah, that's right. She's like, no, do this, do that, do that.
Exactly.
Get rid of that.
I'm really big proponent of failing fast, and I'm not big that it's failure. It's just feedback. So the faster you take action and do things with a said rough roadmap or plan, you either figure out that it works or it doesn't work, you tweak it, and then you do it again, versus sitting in paralysis by
analysis
and getting nothing done. Time passes and nothing changes if nothing changes. So
yeah,
I'd put a different input in to make something else different happen.
Yeah. So, well, enough about me, but anyway, sorry, but it's just like being that client, that like we're talking about athletes. It could be anything. Like, I mean, you could start being an athlete at my age and build like, it's just what you want to do, because you could be passionate about your sport at any age. You don't have to be an elite. I mean, there's so many people just killing it as regular people. But yeah, this has been awesome. And I'm so glad I got you on, because now I like, our mastermind's almost ending. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Is it?
Like,
I think it ends.
September? I think it ends in September, but
it's only July.
I know, but like, it's like, okay, am I getting enough out of this? And anyways, well, thanks. So we're at the top of the hour, but this has been amazing. And I hope everybody, oh, hey, Andrea, do you have any last words of wisdom for us before we end?
Words of wisdom.
Fire me. No, I was kidding.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like what we had kind of talked about in terms of taking action, lots of times people do lots of research, and I'm all for research, but you really need to execute. There's only so much consumption that you can do. And you talk to 5 different people, 50 different people, everyone's going to tell you that they have a different opinion. But until you actually execute something and figure out what is happening, if it works for you or if it doesn't work for you, you're never going to know. You're just going to be basing it off of everyone else's information. So consume appropriately, and then execute, and then decide, okay, this is working, this isn't working, or I want to do this, or I don't want to do that. It's all just feedback and information so that you can continue putting one foot in front of the other. And if you don't know, you don't have to know, but you can find someone else who does.
That's right. You can hire someone.
Yes.
To tell you that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I love it. And that's right. You can only use the research excuse for so long before you have to decide that, did you read what you're looking to read? I just find like people are researching because they're looking for a specific justification for something.
Or permission. Sometimes.
Or permission. Yeah. Like, oh, I thought that was right. This person said it was right. I'm going to go do
Exactly.
But yeah, so thank you so much for being on here. And don't forget, everybody, we're going to thank you guys for joining us and listening. And don't forget to subscribe and put in a review. And Andrea, where can they find you?
You can find me mostly on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to find me. Andrea _Wise _ I answer my DMs. You can text me. My text button's on there. It really is me. I will answer. So find me there. Easiest place.
Perfect. So follow both of us on Instagram. So I'm Sylvie Doe _cyclist. And we got Andrea _Wise. And thank you so much. Please share and give us a great review. Have an amazing day.